baby boomers.
I used to be with it.
Millennials.
Okay, boomer.
Generation X.
What's going on?
And Gen Z. What do they have in common? Not a lot, it turns out. But one thing they can agree on is that this is the political podcast they want to listen to. Welcome to Not My Generation, the political podcast that looks at political events, news, and happenings across the world and at home through a generational lens. Your hosts are Dr. Emily Stacy and Professor James Davenport, two political scientists from Rose State College. But the views expressed on this program are solely the views of the host and their guests and do not reflect the views of Rose State College, its administration, faculty, or students. Coming up on today's program.
And the definition of qualified citizen, my God, has changed so much. In the Constitution, a qualified citizen or an elector would have been a landowning white male.
Jackson wanted to say, I want to expand the electorate, not to include minorities or women, not that. I do take my faith seriously, and I'm a little concerned that the Walters approach to promoting faith through government means actually diminishes the impact.
This is millennial politics. They're all millennials, and J.D. Vance fits perfectly with that crowd. No, it's terrifying.
And now, here are James and Emily. Good morning, Dr. Stacy.
Oh, good morning, James. How are you?
I am doing well. Got some...
Little froggy.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but other than that, I'm doing all right.
Excellent.
Had a good week. It's been a good month. It's been a super, and we will talk about this. I'm sure it has been a super busy month for both of us. But it's Friday.
It is.
The sun's out.
I wish it were cooler.
I'm hoping it doesn't get quite as warm as it did middle of the week. But yeah, it was a little too warm. But other than that, I'm a happy camper. No,
Very
I cannot.
good.
And we are in the wonderful podcast studios of Possibilities Inc. with the marvelous Peaches, our producer.
We love you.
Who's here with us. So things are good this morning.
Indeed. Kind of good as I scroll through, doom scrolling on
Don't
the
do
Twitter
that.
machine.
That'll warp your perspective.
That was definitely a deep sigh. I'm glad that, relatively we're doing well in the, grander scheme of things. Comparatively speaking, there's been a lot of news that has compiled over the last week, not even 48 hours, right. Honestly. And even more so than the last time that you and I have actually discussed current events. I don't know that we've really spoken since the debate even.
That might be, yeah.
The presidential debate.
Certainly not the presidential debate, and then the vice presidential debate, which was significantly better than either presidential debate that we've had.
Yeah, I'll agree with that to a certain extent.
But the bar was so low, right? That
any substantive policy was right. Yeah.
If it didn't deteriorate into I've got a better golf score than you do kind of a thing, it was going to be better. So.
Yes. Yeah. It was nice to see. It was nice for my kids to see, or the students to see, boring politics, right? To see what it is. Back in the good old days, we like to talk about, I'll be 40 this year, right? What politics was like back in the good old boring days when people used to be wonky and talk about policy and actually how they were going to solve problems, not just talk about the problems and blame the other side for creating them. That's always been part of it, right? But it's not been the entire, recipe for campaigning like it has been certainly in the 21st century. So I think my kids were, I call them my kids, my students were, I think, a little surprised that they got bored about halfway through. I was like, well, yeah, kid, it's because
they're not entertaining you.
Exactly. It's not a Fox News, a Fox channel, right? Reality show type of, politics stage situation. Right. So yeah, I was heartened at the very least by the vice presidential debate. But as one of my students noted yesterday at Oklahoma City University, they don't really matter, do they?
No, they don't. And I was having that conversation with someone the other day. I don't even know when we have vice presidential debates. Apparently, the first one was in the presidential election of 1984.
Okay, was that? Was that a fairly contentious? I was born in 84,
No,
so
but
tell me.
If you remember, Geraldine Ferraro had been nominated as vice president for Mondale.
Yes,
and
that's
so,
right. Okay.
They had her and George Bush.
Yeah, that was the novelty of it.
Yeah,
that's it.
And I guess they just kept doing it. Yeah. But I mean, nobody casts a vote based on who the vice president
Certainly
is.
not.
These people, and I hate to, I know they're in the thing, I was rolling my eyes. You're like, it is the case that the vice president is often the last voice the president hears. And it's like,
I know,
the vice president is like the least important person in the administration most of the time.
Have you people not seen Veep? They're in a separate building, like a separate wing.
Exactly.
Like, no.
So, but whatever.
It's called the chief of staff. People.
Right. Exactly. But at least, like you said, it was better than the two other debates that we've seen. And it may be the last debate we get.
I think so.
Right?
I think so. And I really liked, I will just kind of interject momentarily. What I noted to our students is I really like the evolution of these debates being moderated by people of diversity. And so I loved I love Margaret. CBS News is my jam, dude. That's what I watch, local as well as national. I love Gayle King in the morning, and I love me some Nora O'Donnell. So she and Margaret Brennan, I thought, were a great tag team, and they were yelling at both of them.
They did pretty good about keeping things in line,
She yelled
right?
at Tim Walz at one point like I yell at my husband. She said, "Governor," and I said, "Oh my God, that's how I yell at Christopher." She used the hard R. I said, "Oh no."
Yeah, they really. They did not cede control of that to the candidates, right?
At all. They turned their mics off. They were the first to actually proactively turn off mics and be like, "Sorry, bros." It was great. It was really good to see two women be able to really hold their own and not get run over by two men in politics, which is so often the case. So I don't know. I just wanted to shout them out real fast. Not that they're listening to us, but
well, they should be.
I know, right?
We'll email them a link later, right?
Something like that.
But so that went on. We've got Israel is now invading Lebanon. I say invading. They
doing
moved
a ground operation.
a ground operation into Lebanon. Right. Iran lobbed some missiles. I'm beginning to, and I've read some stuff on this recently, that Iran is starting to look a little impotent in their response to. They haven't done anything major. Now, some people are saying, well, they're just waiting until the right time or whatnot. But they lobbed missiles a month or so ago. Most of those were intercepted and had no real impact. To my knowledge, the ones that were sent towards Israel this way have not had a significant impact either. And it's certainly not deterring Israel either in Gaza or in Lebanon now. So.
Not at this point. I think that it is an interesting escalation right now in the fact that it's not Iranian proxies that are targeting Israel. It's Iran itself. Right. It's the regime. And so that's a significant shift in both tone and tenor. And the United States sending more troops to the Middle East in the middle of this week, right, was announced. I don't know, James. I think you need to ratchet your response up just a little bit, right? I'm not an alarmist, but of course IR is my jam.
That is your
I feel
field for
very uneasy about what is going on right now. So the fact that it's the regime itself, and they haven't engaged many of the proxies that surround Israel and Lebanon, that could absolutely ratchet this thing up pretty quickly, especially with United States involvement, because Iran just loves that, especially this new president. I think I've mentioned on here before that in 24 years, I never thought that I would be looking at a president to the right and more extremist than Ahmadinejad. But this one is, and I don't think that he really has any concerns about the repercussions for the Iranian people. Right. So I don't know, man. I'm glad you feel better about it than I do.
I don't feel great about it. I think the idea that Iran is going to launch like a major offensive in the area. I just don't.
They won't themselves.
Right.
They want themselves, and that's the danger. And
Hezbollah took a huge hit with the leadership being basically eviscerated. So that doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy about what's going on. It's interesting to me that I don't know what response they can do if their two major proxies, being Hezbollah and Hamas, are basically devastated.
So I'd be careful with that as well. I'm not sure devastated is the right, or certainly with, Hezbollah, they're a pretty savvy and younger group, right? About 1982, they were established. And so certainly not as young as an Islamic State, but in terms of the sort of centralization of power, you cut one head off and another grows back. And so certainly they have been destabilized. But again, good Lord, Hezbollah waged a proxy war in Lebanon for 20 some odd years, 18 years almost. So again, I would not discount, these terror organizations, especially with Iranian money, with the equipment that they're sending them. And we have to also consider Iran's allies as well, right? Like Russia.
Sure.
So,
I think that's,
be careful.
That's where the major concern is, right? Is
absolutely.
If another great power, so to speak, decides they want to, and I think at least for now, Russia being still bogged down in Ukraine, which they never thought was. Right. Putin was sure this was going to be done, and now we're going on the third or fourth year. What was that? We're about to hit 3 years. Next spring.
Be 3 years in February.
And they're not.
There's no slowing down.
Yeah.
No.
So nobody should just feel like, oh, things are okay at all. And I think everybody would like to see the heat die down and some retraction, but so far we're not there yet. Right. And U.S. policymakers seem to be caught in this. We're going to support Israel, but we don't want Israel to do all the stuff it's doing. And I don't get the sense right now that Israel is paying a whole lot of attention to what we're saying. So
not at all. Netanyahu's got his own plan, right? He's got a nation to run, and he's got his own, buns to cover, right?
I think that's correct. There's going to be some accountability, I think, once this is all over.
Oh, yeah. You've seen the street protest in Israel. The Israelis have been unhappy for a while, right, with Netanyahu and his regime. And so, he understands. He knows. And it almost behooves him for Iran to react and for this to be prolonged, right? That's true. And so I don't know if Iran's going to play into his hands like that. But
hopefully not. But another incentive for them to do so is that, Iran has been dealing with their own protest of citizens and such. And a good way of diffusing that is to find, another enemy, an outside enemy, and rally people around that. Right. Absolutely. So we'll see how this all plays out. It just seems to be getting messier, no end is in sight in the near future.
It's given me quite a bit of heartburn this week, for sure. What'd you make of have we talked about the presidential debate even?
I don't remember if we've talked about it or not, because we've had some guests on since then. And
the second assassination attempt.
Here was my take on the presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump. I thought Harris won the debate. I don't think objectively, if you just sit and watch that, you could come away with any other conclusion. I don't think she did spectacular. Yeah. But you don't have to. She just had to keep calm. Yeah. And she baited Trump in a couple of ways that just really
the crowd took him down. Man, that's always the way.
Took him down a rabbit hole and couldn't get him out of that. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think at the end of the day it moved the needle a whole lot on the election. It still seems like in those handful of states, it's still a toss-up in most of them. Yeah. And But I thought, okay, if you were concerned about her ability to be a president, I thought she looked presidential and sounded presidential. There were 2 or 3 opportunities I thought she had to really not so much get Trump, but to really say, hey, here's some successes we've had. And she didn't take those. I was really surprised at that. And there were a couple of questions that she just obviously didn't want to answer. But given all of that, still better than Trump. And so she certainly did not hurt herself on the debate stage. And I think Trump, to a certain extent, not with his supporters, but I don't think he did himself any favors on that stage. Now, here's my thing. Because all of the cable networks are all like undecided voters. What do the undecided voters think, right?
Of course.
Well, if you're undecided at this point, how engaged are you really?
Right, I agree.
How much attention are you paying? And they do these little mock focus groups. They'll have some undecided voters in the studio,
God bless
and
Frank
give them
once.
right. And it's like, okay, but given the fact that they're in the studio and they're talking to you, they're probably not representative of most undecided voters at this point, right? Most of those folks are not even watching the debate.
Attention. Yeah, that's exactly it.
This is my complaint about debates is the reason they don't have influence is the people who should be watching them aren't.
That's right.
And I don't know what those folks are going to do in making their decision. What information are they going to, is it just going to be whatever my family or peer group, what do they say? Is it going to be commercials that get played? What? And I wonder how many of them are just not going to vote.
That's it. Yeah. I wonder what you make of this. So I love the news story that was kind of wrapped up earlier this week in Nebraska, right? So Trump attempted to persuade Nebraska get rid of its proportional representation or distribution of electors, because according to polling, right now on 270 to win, based on polling, Nebraska's 4 Electoral College or electoral votes would go to Trump likely, and then the 1 would go to Harris. Right. And he is obviously concerned, like most folks are on both sides, that this is going to be a highly contentious and very close election. And so went to Nebraska in an attempt to persuade their conservative legislature. Right. And
they weren't having it.
They were not having it. What'd you make of that?
Maybe that's a sign that Trump's influence might be waning a bit. Well, I'm not convinced of that, but it's certainly a sign that they're like, hey, this is how we've done it. We're not interested in changing it. If you want that other electoral vote, you need to work hard to get it, kind of a thing. I don't know what to make of it, but it is very interesting that, they could have done it. They could have changed the rule. And like you said, I know their legislative elections are technically nonpartisan, but it's a Republican-controlled legislature.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So could you imagine if that had been Oklahoma? I think Oklahoma would have been change that sucker now, right?
Right. I don't know. I found it really interesting. So we were talking about the Electoral College yesterday in class, and so I was telling the kids about this story, and so my soapbox about proportional distribution and proportional representation. It is more representative and more diverse. And I think it takes away some of that apathy that blue voters feel in a red state, right? Whenever you have all 7 Electoral College votes from Oklahoma go to the conservative winner, we have to answer to these, progressive kids all the time. Well, why should I vote? I don't know. There's an argument there for proportional distribution. And I was kind of hoping it would go the other way, right? Instead of convincing them to get rid of proportional distribution, we would be convincing more states to take it on.
Well, here's the problem, right, is the parties, for whatever reason, have figured out that this winner-take-all kind of mechanism benefits them, exactly. Right? And then on top of that, you have all these states. There's 30-some states that have passed laws that said if you're an elector, you have to cast a vote in accordance with your party affiliation, basically, right? And I think that completely eradicates the entire purpose of an electoral college, right? It was there. It was there to be a screening tool for selection of
A
candidates,
fail-safe,
right? Yeah,
right?
and we basically eliminated that mechanism.
And then the elitism of the selection process as well by central committee versus convention, right?
Right.
I'm going to get him on a soapbox here in a minute, audience.
Well, listen, I've talked about the Electoral College a lot.
Drives me crazy.
I wish we would treat it pretty much like an interview committee. I would love to see electors elected by elections of the people in the states.
That part.
Get it out of the hands of the parties.
Yes.
And then empower them to make the best decision based on their review of the candidates.
Exactly.
Right?
Qualifications, merit. Yes.
And that is not to discount the popular vote, but it is also to say, listen, here's the fact. Most people who are going to go vote have not done a deep dive into the candidates and researched all of their policies and looked at all of that, right? So maybe having a hiring committee that does a deeper dive and then makes a decision. And maybe if they're entrusted to us by our own votes rather than party selection, whatever mechanism
that
is.
means. Right. Yes.
I think it could do its job and do it pretty well.
I agree. Right. It's insular. The way that we do it is incredibly elitist, right? A majority of states do it by that central committee and it leaves the populist voice out, which I think you and I both can agree. This is one of those places where libertarian meets the far end.
Yeah, no,
it's about the people's voice.
And I think it opens it up also to other candidates, right?
Exactly. Alternatives.
So that's what I would like to see. I understand why my dream is not probably going to happen anytime soon, but I mean, I just wonder how bad of a president do we need to get produced by the system we have before we say this isn't working?
We have to change this. This is why.
And for people to understand, none of this is written in the Constitution, right? The Constitution doesn't say winner take all. The Constitution doesn't say let the parties choose the electors. And the states have just delegated that responsibility out. And I think that's a horrible way of doing it.
I agree. Yeah, this is, and it's a problem. And this is why I make my kids write in their debate paper. I give them 4 topics, and the Electoral College has been one since 2016 because not enough grown human Americans knew about this middleman in their democracy. Much less the way in which these electors get chosen and that they're left completely out of that process most of the time in most of these states.
And let's be honest, if it's a executive committee of a party that's choosing the electors, you're getting donors.
Exactly. You're getting elites.
People influential.
Right. People, yes, exactly.
If you're chosen by at your convention, you're still going to be an activist, a highly engaged activist. Right. And so they're not representative of the population at large.
Yes. I love you, James Davenport. Sometimes, man, I told you I'd get him on a soapbox, listeners. This is one.
But that's just, and this is why I get frustrated when I hear people, and I know listen, I get it. I get the Electoral College isn't, it doesn't allow democracy, and I get that. But listen, sometimes democracy isn't the best decision-making tool, or at least not direct democracy. Because the Electoral College is democratic in the sense that it's a representative mechanism, or it should be.
Exactly.
It should be a representative mechanism to choose people who are going to do that deep investigation and then make a more informed choice. And yet we've stripped them of any power to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's absolutely elitist and just completely toothless. Yeah. And the definition of qualified citizen, my God, has changed so much since the Constitution, right? In the Constitution, a qualified citizen or an elector would have been a landowning white male, right? Until Jackson. And then it opened it up to, white men, regardless of whether they own property, right?
So this is an interesting thing. I don't know if you've visited with some of your classes about this. So Jackson wanted to say, I want to expand the electorate, not to include minorities or women. Not that, but we need these poor white guys to be able to vote. Yeah. And the mechanism he used to do that. Poll taxes. Yeah, right. So I always thought that's really ironic that in one era that is used as a way of expanding voting, and in another era it's used as a way of preventing voting, right? Reducing voting participation. So that just always struck me as really interesting, the way that the same tool can be used in a positive way or a negative way, right? Yeah. But I'm not a fan of poll taxes, by the way. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm not saying, look, we can use. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying historically that was interesting to me.
Very much so.
We've had some stuff in the state going on too, right? All sorts of interesting things. Our state school superintendent continues to be in the news on a daily basis.
Yeah, what's the latest? You came in with something today.
Yeah, so apparently, the State Board of Education, under the direction of Superintendent Walters, has said they're going to put a Bible in every classroom in Oklahoma. And
like
so
a chicken in every pot. I liked the way you said that.
He's going to be, and listen, okay, let me get my cards out on the table here before, but yes, I'm a person of faith. I take my faith seriously. I want to live by it. I realize I don't always live up to the principles. I try not to be judgmental of other people. Even those
about that too.
Even those who don't share my faith, don't have any faith. I try to say, look, I'm not going to convince them of anything by telling them you're going to hell or you're living the wrong way or whatnot. And so, but I do take my faith seriously, and I'm a little concerned that the Walters approach to promoting faith through government means actually diminishes the impact. And so we're going to have Bibles. And I saw David Blatt. He used to be at Oklahoma Policy. Now he's with the Appleseed Foundation. And David is a really progressive guy, and we probably don't agree on a lot. But I thought he made a really good point about, he in a post on social media is like, I wonder how people who take the Bible seriously as a matter of scripture and a matter of holy faith feel about it being converted just into another historical document that we can take apart and that kind of thing. And I thought, that's a really good point.
That is.
But nonetheless, so they did it. They put out this contract for 55,000 Bibles, purchase of 55,000 Bibles. And the way the bid is written, apparently, I'm getting this from, I think, both Oklahoma Watch and the Oklahoman had stories on this morning. The way the bid reads, it looks like the only Bible that will meet the qualifications is the new Trump-produced Bible, right? And I think that is largely because they said it also had to include the Declaration of Independence and a copy of the U.S. Constitution. And I'm scratching my head to figure out how those were included in the Bible. But nonetheless, that is the case. So this seems almost a little griftish to me.
Yeah. Do you know how much they sell for?
I don't.
$60 each online. I'm pretty sure that definitely doesn't meet the competitive bidding standards, I would imagine.
I have no idea. So the state said they had, I think the OSDE said they had $3 million they were going to push for this project, and they were requesting another $3 million. So I have not done the back of the napkin math on that yet, but that seems like a lot of Bibles. Especially when you can get it online for free, right? I mean, I have on my phone, I have a Bible app that I can, and it didn't cost me anything.
Oh my goodness. Actually, I was wrong. So I'm reading the Oklahoman story on this. So they reported Lee Greenwood's Bible, actually, God Bless the USA Bible. It actually does meet the standards. It was actually endorsed by Trump and referred to as the Trump Bible. That's the one. No. That's the one that costs $60 online. Mardell doesn't carry that one. So the We the People Bible, which was also endorsed by Trump, sells for $90.
Oh, wow. So
I mean, this is pretty pricey I wonder, comparatively speaking, to a textbook. I mean, we know how much a college textbook costs. That's about 2/3 of what an American federal government book would cost. Right. My goodness.
And I'm like, and I don't get it. I mean, so they'll put it in a classroom and it'll sit on a shelf. Are they going to, how are they going to monitor? Are you using that? And what is the mandated uses of it? Right. And what do you do with all the students who have a different version of the Bible that they use?
Or a different faith entirely.
Exactly. No, exactly right. Right. What do you do with Muslims? What do you do with Hindus? What do you do with Jewish students? You know, I don't get how this benefits people in a serious way. Yeah. Do I think religious faith benefits people? I absolutely do. Do I think coercion into compliance with a particular faith works? I do not. And so I'm at a loss here. $3
million.
I am going to be interested in seeing what this LOFT investigation, right? So those who are not familiar, LOFT is the Legislative Office of Fiscal Transparency. Speaker McCall has requested an investigation into OSDE spending and financial management. And I'm not sure when that review is supposed to be completed, but I thought it was like by the end of this month.
I'm pretty sure.
And I'll be interested to see what that produces, right? You also had another conservative House member the other day who got basically was saying that they don't agree with Walter's way. He's in trouble over the inhalers, right? So the legislature authorized a certain amount of funds to place emergency inhalers for students in the schools, and that's been sitting in there for a year, and he hasn't spent them to provide those. And Attorney General Drummond issued a tersely worded letter to say, get off the dime and get these inhalers out to those schools. And another member of the House, if I remember, I can't remember who it was saying, whatever Walters is saying about why this hasn't, he's wrong. He's had these funds. He knew what they were for. He should have done this a year ago.
Yeah, a few of them came out and said it.
Yeah, so the question is, will at the end of the day he be held accountable? And the only way you hold this kind of official accountable really is through that impeachment process, right? And I think that depends on how those members of the legislature view his political credibility with the public, right? And I haven't seen any polling lately, so I don't really know. We're working on getting maybe some pollsters in for a show sometime soon to talk about that, because I'd love to know just some insights that they can provide. But I don't get the sense he's as popular.
I agree.
As he was when he got elected. Yeah. And if they get the feeling that, okay, it's safe for me to vote to impeach, then they'll do it. If not, he's going to be there until he runs for governor, which apparently he has said without say. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. McCall and Drummond are out to get him because they are afraid of him in the governor's election. Well, that basically says you're running for governor. Right.
So, yeah, I want to quickly clarify. So they did the bid based on the $60 version of the Bible. So I just wanted to make sure. But there are alternatives that could cost up to $99. Right. So the initial bid, they based it on. So it would be around
apparently there are
million.
two versions that would meet that criteria.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Both having been endorsed by Trump.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So
because that's what's going to make the difference on whether or not I buy a particular Bible is whether Donald Trump has endorsed it.
I mean, isn't it that same virtue signaling that he's been trying? I mean, it's an audience of one. Exactly. Ryan Walters wants in on whatever happens in the next Trump administration or whatever Trump affiliate, designee comes after him. He wants in the gang. And he's doing a great job of appeasing him, I think, and getting his attention.
I've heard some people, asking. They weren't asking me, they were just kind of asking in general, why is it, does he act this way? Why is it, does he and by and large, he's found that with some segment of the electorate, it works.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Well, why does Marjorie Taylor Greene? Why does Lauren Boebert? Why does Matt Gaetz? There's a new brand, right? This is your
Gen Z politics,
exactly.
Right here, right?
No, not even Gen Z. This is millennial politics. So? No, they're all millennials. They're all millennials, and JD Vance fits perfectly with that crowd.
Yeah.
No, it's terrifying that this has become the political persona rather than governance. I'm going to be a mouthpiece. I'm going to be a talking head and spew out random, perhaps not factual things to get attention, and it garners that attention that's needed for name recognition, etc. But name recognition does not equal good governance.
No, that's exactly right. And And he, there is some segment of the voting public that responds to this kind of strong, tough talk, perceived strong, tough
absolutely.
talk, right? I'm not going to get run over by the liberal, right? This is always the liberals, the socialists, the woke, whatever term he wants to throw out there. As long as he can get you thinking, oh, that's who he's fighting against. Right. Well, I need him fighting against you, right?
Those commies.
Right, exactly. And anyway,
I love it.
It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out for him.
I agree.
How it plays out in the legislature. Will McCall, if that Loft report comes back and says there's been significant mismanagement,
I don't know how he could dodge it again.
Yeah, how do you we'll let the voters decide in 2 years.
Yeah, I don't think he can get away with that. I think he would be
And
in
here's
danger.
the thing. Let's say he's in a primary with McCall and Drummond and maybe 2 or 3 other folks. You don't need a majority at that point to get out of that primary. Right? Into a runoff at least. Right. You just need a committed group of 20 to 30% that get you to the runoff.
Yep. And he has it.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Let's see. Well, in addition to all that news, we've been pretty active, right? We've been very active. So let's start back. Constitution Week, our Constitution Extravaganza. Oh my gosh. I love that week every year. It is a ton of work. We don't get much rest, but the students enjoy it.
Yeah, we have a good time.
And I think not just the students, but all the faculty who are involved to help us out and other players. And so this year we had always lead off with our Constitution Jeopardy, which is always fun. We do a faculty version and then a student version. The students get awarded with basically scholarship money, right? And then the faculties just get bragging. We get bragging rights. And I just want to say, I'm the one who gets to brag this year.
You do.
I have a mug that certifies me as the Constitution Overlord.
Right.
So I'm very excited about that.
Sorry, Aaron.
Especially after I flamed out last year. I had to redeem myself from that. So
yes, congratulations.
So I'm still on cloud 9 from my victory in Constitution Jeopardy. Then we had Dr. Jack Rakoff came in. He's a professor emeritus, I think, from Stanford University, talking about the Constitution. He came in on Tuesday of that week. Wednesday, we had our race for the Constitution, which really went better than I expected it to. I was not in a good headspace the day before or even the morning of, and then it just really came all together. And that is in large part to all the cooperation with both you and then our faculty, Dr. Batchoffer, Dean Conkin came out and helped with some, Liz Brown. Yeah. All of these folks who helped us pull that together, and the students seem to really enjoy it.
Explain to the people what Race to the Constitution is.
So if you've ever seen The Amazing Race, where people run all over the world and they have to do all these different challenges, well, we built our Race for the Constitution, and this year they were literally racing around our campus, having to do a variety of activities that had something to do with the Constitution. Right. You may not have, if you've seen any of the video, and we have a night, maybe we'll link that to that in the show notes, one of the videos of some of the activities. So there's one I love. I did not think initially I was like, I don't know, but they had to do a hula hoop thing. And while they're doing the hula hoop, they have to recite the preamble to the Constitution. And it's just great. It's just, they look like they're having fun. And they did. And we had some more challenging ones. Dr. Batchoffers did a lecture on 10 presidents, and then they had to identify them. And I think that slowed them down a bit. A little bit. We had a tax scenario that they had to go through that was really fun.
Killed me.
And then they ended up, you did the very last challenge where they had to find or had to identify which congressman represented the 5 districts in Oklahoma. And what was interesting, so there was a team that jumped out ahead of everybody else. They were just, by the time you got to that last one, a couple of the other teams had caught, and they were all 3 doing that last piece together. And it was like, I wonder who's going to win. Eventually they do win, but I think it's only because they got there first and had several attempts at doing it, right? Yeah. So a lot of fun. And then we wrap it up Notice what I did there. We wrap it up with a Federalist, anti-Federalist rap battle. Oh my gosh.
Indeed.
This was fun too.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
We're going to have to do it again.
We need to follow up with Dr. Batchoffer's suggestion of putting some music behind that and recording those because number one, we had a local artist. We had a local rap artist who helped us craft lyrics. So we provided source material and we said, can you create some little rap songs for each of these? Wonderful job. Just absolutely magnificent at doing that. And then you had us faculty that were doing different pieces. I did one from Federalist 51. You did from Thomas Paine, Common Sense. Dr. Batcher Alpha did one from Washington's first inaugural. Right. Professor Vic was from, remind me of, it was one of the anti-Federalist females. One of the female writers, anti-Federalist papers. And then Professor Wood. Is he Dr. Wood? Should I say Dr. Wood? Dr. Wood wrapped it up with a rendition from Frederick Douglass's "What is the 4th of July to a Slave," which was that's one of my favorite writings, by the way. And so really fun. Really, I was really self-conscious, but I think the students enjoyed us.
Loved it.
And so that was a brilliant idea.
I was really impressed by my colleagues. They were embarrassed, I think. But the flow, you all have really great flows. I was very impressed by you guys.
I will say I was really impressed. Dr. Batchoffer got some singing going on.
Yeah. Oh my God. He totally killed it. Dr. Batchoffer won. We did have a judging panel. Battle. Yes. So he won second. I won second and he won first, which was right. He should have won first. He killed that. It was amazing.
He's got a little performer in him, I think.
Duh. So, yeah, it was fabulous.
So that was a great week. And it's a wonderful way to introduce students to the Constitution. Yeah. In an environment that's not sitting in the classroom in a lecture, right? And I think they'll remember a bunch of that.
Oh yeah, forever.
Forever. So if you are interested in supporting next year's Constitution Extravaganza, you need to reach out to us because this is a way to really impact students and our community, foster greater civic education, and have fun doing it.
Absolutely.
So there's my little plug for that. In addition to that, we've had some other enterprises going on. You've written some op-eds recently in different places. Tell us about those.
Sure.
I told you I was going to make you brag on yourself today.
I did a couple of op-eds recently. One I'm working on currently that's in my inbox and sitting looking at me that I need to finish. What did I write about? I don't remember.
So you wrote one on the Harris campaign following that. I was going to try to, and I could never get around to doing it, but
you were super busy.
You wouldn't have made it any better. You wrote a fantastic,
thank you. I appreciate
fantastic piece. And I think Oklahoma Voice,
would
that run that?
Yeah.
So talking about just how it signaled a change in the way campaigns are going to start communicating with voters.
I think so, right? I think, I think we agree on the fact that I don't know that the convention or the debate, guarantees what's going to happen in November. But I do think that her campaign has indicated a completely new direction for the parties going forward in that they've got to engage youth of color, particularly. So, I wanted to make sure that people out there were paying attention to what was going on and specifically that my students are excited for the first time in years about what's going on. So the use of, rap music, of pop culture, things like that. But then also very ingeniously using folks like Liz Cheney. I mean, Liz Cheney came out yesterday for Harris. And so kind of pulling in those independents as well. So just a really interesting kind of fresh 21st century American politics 2.0 campaign situation. So and then I'm working on one on our uncivil society. So I've just, have been thinking a lot about how we get back to good, how we get back to the pre-Trump civil society or pre-Trump Trump democracy. And what's really devoid now is that civil society, right? That the civil society has deteriorated. We don't talk to one another. And when we do, we're doing it online. And so we have that veil of anonymity where we can be incredibly hostile and vitriolic to one another. And a civil society is the cornerstone of a functioning democracy.
Exactly right.
So anyway, I'm on a soapbox about us rebuilding, civic engagement and caring about our neighbors and our local communities and, politics up from there, right from the grassroots.
And I was over the weekend, I was in Davidson College speaking much about the same thing, talking about how do we foster civil discourse? How do we foster viewpoint diversity and constructive disagreement in higher ed, but in society in general. Right. And the reception was really warm, very positive, I thought. But it's hard because I feel like higher ed is being squeezed in two different directions, right? There's one direction that from within that says we want to be exclusive in this way. And then you have direction from outside the institution, largely from governments, state governments, especially more conservative ones that want to impact it in a different way. And all of these college leaders are kind of in this bind of how do I satisfy both constituencies,
keep my job,
and it can be very, very challenging. And I don't like either direction of saying we're going to close down avenues of investigation. I'm big on free academic inquiry. You should be able to pursue whatever line of investigation you want to pursue as an academic and not be fearful that somebody somewhere in a position of power is going to cut you off at the knees because they don't like what you've come up with. I'm a big believer in being able to speak about that and on issues of public interest. I'm not one who says, there are a lot of people who are like, well, because I said something and then you criticized me for saying it, then you're trying to cancel me, right?
Right.
Listen, free speech means the government can't punish you for saying what you said. It does not mean there are not ramifications for what you said.
That's right.
And I don't like, I will say I don't like it when people go after people's jobs or they go after people's families. I don't like that. Yeah. But I think it's fair game. If you want to put something out there in the public domain, you need to be prepared that somebody is probably going to disagree with you. And I've written enough stuff that I've gotten hate emails, pretty regularly from stuff I've written. And it's okay. I mean, I've had stuff where, a lot of times when you publish something online, they'll have a comment section. Oh, right. And there have been some times when I've engaged with the comments and such, but you have to understand that not everybody's going to agree with you. Absolutely. And the best way of dealing with that is to not insult them or to go into this, oh, woe is me, somebody criticized me, but to either engage with them in a way that fosters discussion or to just keep your mouth shut. Exactly. And, but I really get aggravated at people who are like, I should be free to say what I say and there should be no consequences. Exactly. Well, that's not life. Yeah. Growing up, I could say whatever I want, but my parents were probably going to bring the hammer if I said some stuff they didn't like. Right. But the government can't punish you. And that means for those who don't understand, if you're at a public institution, that's a branch of the government, right? And so faculty at these public institutions have maximum freedom, or at least they should have maximum freedom to, again, investigate the questions they want to investigate, offer their opinions and expertise on areas of public interest without fear of losing their job or being punished in some other way. But that doesn't shield them from social criticism, right? Of course not. And I have found the ones that are best at this are the ones who will find ways of trying to engage, at least with the more, listen, if somebody just comes off and start hurling insults at you, just ignore them. Those people are always going to be there. But people who have more valid criticisms and present them, as we said, in a way that fosters discourse,
civil
respond
discourse.
To them appropriately. Respond to them and say, hey, let's have one of the most interesting things, and I'm really going to be on a kick on this, especially we have an event coming up later this month, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't think it's new, but it's not, I don't know how broadly it is, but it's called adversarial collaboration. Okay. Have you heard of this? So let's say you have two researchers. They're investigating ostensibly the same phenomenon. Yeah. They come up with two different conclusions, right? Well, adversarial collaboration means now they're going to get together, see if they can design a study together that will identify who is closer to the truth, or where are they both close and where are they both far away. Yeah. Oftentimes you'll have a mediator who kind of bridges the gap between them. And then you do research and you're like, now we're going to have a more definitive answer. And I think that's a brilliant way of bridging these kind of disagreements that we have on things. And so I'm really trying to push that where I have the opportunity to say, look, if you have two academics or two researchers who have fundamental disagreement on that, put them together and see what they come up with. They'll probably come up with something pretty good. I agree, yeah. And so that's my new thing going on.
We love communication that goes both ways, not just you listening to us pontificate. We would love to hear from our audience. If you have comments, suggestions, or would like to contact us about possibly being a guest on the show, please email notmygeneration@raider.rose.edu.
Before we get out of here, and I just got the notice about time, but we do need to talk about our upcoming Great Debates panel. You want to mention that?
So we always, I should say, semesterly, I coordinate and typically host the Great Debate Panel at Rose State College. This semester's is going to be on raising the minimum wage, necessary or not. Yes, I come up with the titles myself. And so we've got a great panel, including Professor Davenport here, who is on the anti side of things, as well as Dr. Samantha Johnson down from OU. Who will also be on the anti-side, Gabriela Perez from Oklahoma Policy Institute, as well as Dr. Travis Roach from UCO, who will be on the pro side.
Who makes me nervous as heck.
They're great.
I really like Dr.
so
Roach.
Much.
And I have always had I don't always agree with the folks at Oklahoma Policy, but I have always had good interactions with them. Yeah, they are sharp people.
Factual.
They know their stuff. Exactly. And if you're gonna disagree with them, you better bring your A game.
Yeah,
because
receipts. Yes.
They're gonna be there and they're gonna be prepared. Yeah, and absolutely. So I always enjoy interacting with them.
Me too.
Dr. Roach is I think he's fantastic. Again, I don't always agree with him, and you'll see some of that on this panel.
It'll be great.
But he brings the receipts, as you said. Yeah. I mean, he is on top of his game. So. And he does great work. And a good friend of mine, an academic mentor, if you will, is going to be filling in for Dr. Stacy because you're going to be where?
I'll be at Austin Community College, co-leading an institute, a new faculty cohort of the Great Questions Foundation.
That is so great. So you got involved in this last year, is that right?
Yeah, I got the fellowship last fall and worked into the spring redesigning one of my courses to be text-based and discussion-based rather than a textbook and more, multiple choice, et cetera. Sure. So more discourse like we always try to foster. So I did my comparative course, and then, the leader of the institute down there reached out.
Let's give him a shout.
Yeah, Ted.
Ted is a fantastic.
We love Ted at Austin Community College. We're going to have him on the podcast pretty soon.
Oh, that would be great.
We really do need to promote them a lot more. So I'm going to go down and help other faculty members try to redesign their syllabi in the same manner. So yes, I'm sad to miss this debate. It's one of my favorite events of the semester. If you want to come, it is going to be at Rose State College on Thursday, October 24th at 11 a.m. in our Community Learning Center auditorium. Please check the Rose State website calendar for more details. It's absolutely free to the public. It will be a great conversation. So please make sure that you show up.
Yeah. And again, a big thanks to Dr. Sue-Lynn Sasser, who's going to be filling in since you can't be there. As I mentioned, she is a mentor of mine, actually got me into teaching economics, which is a whole side story that we don't have time for, but and kind of rejuvenated my passion for teaching as a result. So
thank you, Dr. Sasser.
She is a great lady in her own right. Who has retired from UCO after being in their economics department for a number of years. So this is going to be a great time. And yes, if you can come out, we would love to.
I'm sad to miss it.
I think we're going to record it, right?
Of course, we're going to record it.
Yeah. So we will have video evidence of whatever is said.
Yes, it'll be a good one. And of course, we know that, one of the topics that certainly will be discussed is Governor Stitt moving the date on that vote to 2026. So please make sure.
And speaking of that, we've both done some media work, been interviewed for some different stories and stuff as well, right? And that prompted me because a couple of stories that I've been interviewed for recently have been exactly on that point as to what's the rules regarding when you can set the election and how much discretion does the governor have, and then what are the political implications of having it on this date versus that date. So. So we're out there. You can find us just about anywhere.
I did actually just do an interview. I did want to announce this, I suppose, to the listeners. With the Oklahoma Gazette, they're relaunching.
Are they?
And so Ben Felder,
nice.
I had a conversation with him earlier this week, just kind of for Congressional District 5 and kind of changing demographics, things like that. But I was really excited to hear about the Oklahoma Gazette reestablishing or relaunching. That thing was a mainstay in my all throughout my life, and then it just went away. And so I was really excited to hear that. So stay tuned, folks.
And did you say Ben Felder?
Ben Felder, yeah. Yeah. He's a great journalist.
Another good guy. Yeah. So lots of going on.
Indeed.
And we're going to keep letting you know about it. We're going to have, before we get out here, our next episode is going to be promoting the upcoming Oklahoma Political Science Association meeting, which Dr. Stacy is the host, the conference chair, if you will. And if I can say so, the incoming president, right? So by the time the conference is over, she will be President Stacy.
And tired.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to that. So that's November 7th and 8th.
Yes, sir. Because we're masochists in political science. We like to do it on the week of the election. There's nothing else going on.
Right. Well, you get that hot takes kind of feel from election fallout, right?
Lord, yes.
So we got that going on as well. Lots of stuff happening. We're having a lot of fun. I think we're both, even though we're having a lot of fun, I think we're both kind of looking forward to the Christmas break where we can put our feet up a little bit and rest some.
Very much so.
Before we launch back into this stuff in the spring. But we appreciate everyone listening to us and excited. We've got the Dr. Brett Sharp and then Dr. Shanna Padgham will be back with us the next time, right?
Yes, indeed.
So stay tuned and we will see you there. And we want to remind you that
democracy is not a spectator sport.
Hey everyone, this is Deborah, the resident Gen Z member of the Not My Generation podcast family. Not My Generation is produced in the Possibilities Inc. studio. This episode was produced by Lauren Peaches Keller. It was edited by Santiago Ramones. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. Send a voice memo to notmygeneration@raider.rose.edu and you could hear your voice on an upcoming episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and sharing the podcast with others. You can check out previous episodes on any podcast app and on our podcast website at notmygeneration.captivate.fm, where we also provide our show notes. And remember, you can follow Not My Generation on X, formerly known as Twitter, at NMG Podcast, and on Facebook at Not My Generation Podcast. We look forward to interacting with you soon.